more of that discussion. But coming back, I think you were one of the invitees to the inauguration of the state president, which took place last week. Amongst many politicians, professionals, business executives, and civil society, some 2,000 people attended. What was your observations having attended this inauguration? Because obviously it is a big function. It's basically introducing the state president, who happened to be in office for 5 years, but he's now been extended for another 5 years. But elected democratically through a process of these opposition parties now being involved beside MK and EFF. But the others, the majority, have voted him back as president. What were your observations in this inauguration?
I think importantly, it was a great experience for me. I hadn't been to an inauguration before. So I was invited as the chairman of Goldfields to attend the event. And it started very early, I must say. You had to get into the park and ride area quite early in the morning. And we got there at 6 a.m. And from there on, you get bussed up to the top of the union buildings. So you get there by quite early in the morning. And ultimately, I think even though we had to wait for a good couple hours, the positive vibe that I felt at the inauguration was really excellent and exciting. And so my own view is that positive vibe, I'm hoping, will filter down into the, call it, appointment of the executives in the cabinet. And there needs to be negotiation. I mean, in any situation, you have to negotiate an outcome, and you always start high. So I'm hoping that the actual negotiations take the right course and get to the conclusion that the country needs. But generally speaking, I mean, the atmosphere there, the positive energy that everyone was putting up, showing. And you could meet anyone you wanted in the audience. You could literally walk around and speak to John Steenhuisen, or you're going to talk to, the head of the IFP, which I did. And, you meet up with everyone either on the bus, going down back for lunch, or, coming up in the bus. So my own view, it's a great experience. And it was really a good opportunity for us to showcase what South Africa can do in the current difficult challenges that we've had in the past. The feeling I got is that we will find solutions to whatever challenges we have. And I think that's very mature of everyone. All the parties came together in the government of national unity. I believe it's positive for the country. And we hope that the right outcome is that the people that will be appointed will be the workers that will deliver the services to the people. We have been disappointed as citizens. And I think going forward, if we've got people that are prepared to work hard and ultimately deliver the services to the people, we'll grow substantially in the future. We saw the actual movement of the exchange rate getting stronger. And ultimately, if you look at even the stock exchange, you look at the movements, there's been a lot of positive vibe. And I think it's filtering down from that inauguration where there was a unified view of who should be re-elected, which is our president. And ultimately, as I said, we're all looking forward to getting to a final outcome with the appointment of the cabinet. And I'm hoping that the right outcome will then deliver what we need as a country.
Yeah, haven't you spent a lot of time outside the country and also coming back into the country and being involved in the financial sector for the better part of your life. You mentioned that the markets have reacted positively. Currently, there is a bit of a drawback because the cabinet has not been appointed, but we are firmly of the view that the appointment will take place within the next few days. They're just grappling over certain positions. From your view from the outside and now on the inside, is there positive sentiment, as far as the professionals and executives are concerned? Because you come from the mining background, being the chair of Goldfields and also a huge investment company, Liberty Holdings. You being the chair, obviously you'll be able to advise. Is there positive sentiment from these big companies, including Al Barakah Bank, in terms of the way forward for South Africa?
No, definitely. There's a lot of strong positive sentiments. And I mean, if you look at Al Barakah's results for 2023, it was the best year ever in 35 years. And so, in essence, I think more and more people are moving towards Sharia compliant products. But if you look at the actual sentiment from a, call it, Goldfields point of view, very strong positive investments. We've spent 760 million in solar plants at our only the mine in sort of South Deep in Western area. But it's positive, call it, sentiments coming through with this, call it, significant investments, and also to address challenges that we face, whether it's electricity shortages or whatever. Let's work together to find common solutions. So overall, I believe that the actual business is there to help, and they're very positive to work together with government to deliver the outcomes that we need to do.
Now, we know there were challenges the government had in the last 30 years and declined in the last few years in terms of service delivery. And I think the voters have indicated in terms of the last elections, and later on in the program, Brother Ahmed Mansoor Imam will chat on that issue. Uh, Voters have spoken, and I'm sure you followed the election process, and the ANC has lost its majority. So I wouldn't say they were forced into the GNU, but obviously they had to take a decision. Either they go in as a minority government or have this GNU. And the GNU has actually started to prove positive results in that the opposition parties have voted the president, or have voted the speaker in from the ANC, and then vice versa, the ANC has voted a DA individual as deputy speaker, and so on. And we know when the cabinet positions are announced, we will see the outcomes of the GNU. So, in terms of opportunities for the country in it at itself, do you firmly believe that the mining sector, the insurance sector, the investment sector, the banking sector are all confident that South Africa will emerge as being one of the important countries worldwide?
If I can just quote from the president's speech very briefly, and this is directly from his speech, and I'm quoting: "It is a moment of fundamental consequence in the life of our nation. It is a moment when we must choose to either move forward together or risk losing all we have built. In this moment, we must choose to move forward." That's just few examples of what the president would like to see happening. And from a government and from a business or private sector point of view, we want to work together to do exactly what we're talking about, moving forward. If you look at South Africa in the context of the global village, there's no better country than South Africa for people like ourselves. There's nowhere else. Now, I've traveled to maybe 45, 50 countries around the world in my lifetime. And I've always thought about where else could I live? And it's never crossed my mind that I want to immigrate anywhere in the world, because South Africa has got the best opportunity, the best lifestyle, the quality of life, and the cost of living you'll never find anywhere in the world. So it is in all our interest to make sure that we get the outcomes that we would like to find coming out of the Government of National Unity. And we are all committed to support that journey as a corporate citizen. So it's about now working together with government, but it's also finding the people that want to work hard and not find easy ways to make money. And that's the big challenge we face.
Now, coming back finally, I know you've got time constraints. You need to fly back tomorrow, and it's quite late. In terms of the integration of personnel in the workplace, I mean, you've been involved with many companies and being chairman of these various organizations. Do you find that these organizations have appointed and trained competent people to run the organizations? For example, if we talk about goldfields, the various key positions, you being a chair, you would look at the organogram and ensure that the right people are appointed who got the necessary skills. Because one of the complaints the Democratic Alliance has made to the ANC as part of the negotiation process for the cabinet positions is that we want to get involved in a lot of these cabinet positions, either as cabinet ministers or possibly deputy. But we will also want to ensure that we review the appointment of the director generals and directors, because these guys drive the delivery process like in the private sector. And we are here in the private sector will make sure they appoint competent people. So what's your take in this whole appointment of competent people to do the job?
Well, one of the top priorities of any company is diversity and inclusion. It actually has resulted in them having formal policies on this, and that would drive the appointments of competent people. Because often when you're looking for people, you'd find you want to get the easiest appointment, meaning the person with the best experience, and not necessarily looking at race or, whatever other experience they have. But I think in this case, you have to be very focused in actually diversity and inclusion has to be a priority. And you'd find in most instances that the actual juniors and the seniors are all looked at in context of competence and academic qualification, but also experience. And in most instances as well, we've actually grown the portfolios of people to give them that opportunity to develop themselves. And I'm firmly of the belief that we are growing significantly, giving a lot more people opportunities to excel. And you have to deliver the goods as well as an individual. You can't expect to get promoted. I mean, to example that I went to Nigeria to earn my stripes. It wasn't easy for my family. At that time, back in 1998, no water, no electricity, no telephone, you know, roads were all potholes, no electric, no traffic lights, nothing. But you sacrifice. You go there, you earn your stripes, and you come back. Don't expect to be just given a job if you're not experienced enough or not actually competent enough. You will get opportunities, but you have to pursue it. And that's definitely the case in the corporate world. People are given an opportunity, then it's up to you as an individual to persevere and to deliver what is expected or more to the company.
Okay, in conclusion, I just want to chat briefly about the Al Baraka Bank. You've joined them recently. A lot of our Muslim investors are investing in the bank. The bank has emerged as one of the bigger Sharia compliant banks. Your experience in Al Baraka for the last 12 months, what have you observed? Is they're very good at governance, ensuring that the place is run very professionally and investments are done wisely worldwide, and that they react to negative and positive sentiments in the markets?
No, absolutely. I mean, Alberg is very well run. You know, we've got Shabir, that's the CEO, that's been there for like 20 years, and the team around him are very loyal. And ultimately, governance is not negotiable. You have to do what is right for the country, for the stakeholders, including the regulator. And we've done it all right. I mean, sometimes you have challenges, but at the end of the day, I think that the environment is really a great environment. I really enjoy coming down to Durban to come and attend board meetings like tomorrow. And I think it give you great food as well.
And also back home to meet your
To meet
family.
family. So overall, I mean, it's a great environment. And I think maybe there's aspiring people out there that want to a career in the financial services, especially the Sharia compliant bank that Al Baraka is, being the only sort of standalone bank that is Sharia compliant. It's a fantastic opportunity, but also for people out there to put their monies into something that they can trust and grow. And recently there was the government sukuk, the national government sukuk that was implemented, 20 billion of that, and Al Baraka participated in that, and we're very happy that there's more Sharia compliant opportunities to invest your money.
No, in fact, as Al Azhar Foundation, we are proud to be associated with Al Baraka Bank in various projects. We met with Brother Shabir Chauhan, the CEO, and he's going to work closely with the Al Azhar Foundation. We sort of recruited a few retired professionals to work with us and take this particular foundation to another level. But just on a closing note, I recall the early days and the humble days. I went to drop some colleague of mine out to pick up his car in Foreman Road, and that's where you hail from. And I told him that I'm interviewing Yunus tomorrow, or that it was yesterday, and that's a house he used to stay on, and that's a shop they were in the bottom, and now it's a area full of squatters, etc. You recall those early days, Yunus?
No, absolutely. I used to walk to school from Foreman Road.
Which school you? Burnwood High.
Burnwood High.
Yes.
Yeah, I used to walk to school.
Yeah, I also studied in Burnwood High and studied at UDW as well. So we remember those humble days.
Yeah.
But, it's an example of hard work, perseverance, taking the opportunities that are there. And here you are, chairman of 3 massive companies and also former chairman of KPMG. So, colleagues, Yunus, your closing comments.
No, our closing comments. I'm looking forward to this government of national unity. I'm really positive about it, and I think ultimately we as individuals have to support the outcomes that come out of it, and be there to really put our effort in to make it a success.
Shukran, Yunus, for joining us. I think you've enlightened us very briefly on some very important issues, and I think our listeners out there are very positive about the future of the country. You, having been a senior executive in a lot of big financial companies, including Al Baraka Bank, we look forward to having more interviews with you and Shabir on the workings of Al Baraka going forward. We look forward to having a good association with you all. And as the Al Ansar Foundation, we involve in a lot of humanitarian work, and this is part of the hadith of Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, that the best amongst us is those that help others. So we know in these difficult times, unemployment being quite high, and I don't want to talk about that subject because it's another subject on its own, that after our retirement we chose to be in the sector, and I'm sure you will provide or have opportunities to join us in assisting our indigent communities out there, because that's part of the process of reformation in South Africa. But I thank you, Yunus, for joining us, and all the best on your future endeavors and your chairmanship of these various boards. I know you will provide a lot of valuable input, and we will meet you from time to time when you come to KZN. Shukran. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum salam. Jazakallah.
That was Mr. Yunus Suleiman, the chairman of various companies in the JSE, etc. We will ensure we get Yunus on a future interview. It's a short interview today. We will have a short break on that note, and inshallah we'll continue.
Your station, my station, our station, Radio Al Ansar.
Discover our new range of exotic perfumes, ouds and bukhur, straight from Dubai, now available at Wonder Dates. We stock a wide selection of Nabil and Chris Adams fragrances, perfect for your unique lifestyle. But that's not all. We also cater to your Islamic lifestyle needs with prayer mats, tasbeehs, dua stickers, bukhur burners and mizwaks. Looking for herbal capsules and essential oils? Look no further. Experience the beauty of Wonder Dates. Shop now and elevate your senses.
Welcome to Simplex Radio. Visit our showroom for the full range of car audio. Our TV department carries top brands with quality LED panels, full HD to Ultra HD, and now the experience of Super Ultra HD. Visit our theater rooms and transform your home with brands like Onkyo, Integra, Denon, Boston Acoustics, Yamaha, and more for quality audio visual experience. Now available, full range of home appliances. A one-stop shopping experience. Call 031 306 4029 or Kenilworth Park, 202 Brickfield Road, Overport. Simplex Radio, the name you can trust.
اللهم احفظ المسجد الأقصى من اليهود الحاقدين اللهم أعد المسجد الأقصى إلى رحاب المسلمين اللهم وطهر المسجد الأقصى من اليهود الغاصبين اللهم عليك بهم فإنهم لا يعجزونك يا قوي يا متين اللهم منزل الكتاب مجري السحاب هازم الأحزاب سريع الحساب اهزم اليهود وزلزلهم يا قوي يا عزيز.
Radio Al Ansar, Durban 90.4 FM, Pietermaritzburg 105.6 FM.
मेरे आका आका मेरे आका आका मेरे आका आका मेरे आका ये नाम कोई काम बिगड़ने नहीं देता
बिगड़े भी बना देता गर बस नाम मोहम्मद
नाते सरकार की पढ़ता हूँ मैं नाते सरकार की पढ़ता हूँ मैं बस इसी बात से घर में मेरे रौनक होगी एक तेरा नाम वसीला है मेरा मेरे सोने आका एक तेरा नाम वसीला है मेरा रंजो गम में बस इसी नाम से राहत होगी
नाते सरकार की पढ़ता हूँ मैं बस इसी बात से घर में मेरे रौनक होगी
या रसूल अल्लाह या हबीब अल्लाह
या मोहम्मद मोहम्मद मैं कहता रहा नूर के मोतियों की लड़ी बन गई या मोहम्मद मोहम्मद मैं कहता रहा नूर के मोतियों की लड़ी बन गई या मोहम्मद मोहम्मद मैं कहता रहा
नूर के मोतियों की लड़ी बन गई
आयतों से मिलाता रहा आयतों से मिलाता रहा फिर जो देखा तो नाते नबी बन गई या मोहम्मद मोहम्मद मैं कहता रहा नूर के मोतियों की लड़ी बन गई या मोहम्मद मोहम्मद मैं कहता रहा नूर के मोतियों की लड़ी बन गई जो भी आंसू बहे मेरे सरकार के सबके सब अब्र रहमत के छींटे बने
जो भी आंसू बहे मेरे सरकार के सबके सब अब्र रहमत के छींटे बने
सबके सब अब्र रहमत के छींटे बने छा गई रात जब जुल्फ लहरा गई
छा गई रात जब जुल्फ लहरा गई
जब तबस्सुम किया चांदनी बन गई या मोहम्मद मोहम्मद मैं कहता रहा नूर के मोतियों की लड़ी बन गई या मोहम्मद मोहम्मद मैं कहता रहा नूर के मोतियों की लड़ी बन गई
कुर्बान में उनकी बख्शिश के कुर्बान में उनकी बख्शिश के
मकसद भी जुबां पर आया नहीं मकसद भी जुबां पर आया नहीं बिन मांगे दिया और इतना दिया
बिन मांगे दिया और इतना दिया
दामन में हमारे समाया नहीं दामन में हमारे समाया नहीं
कुर्बान में उनकी बख्शिश के
कुर्बान में उनकी बख्शिश के ये सुना है कि बहुत घोर अंधेरी होगी
ये सुना है कि बहुत घोर अंधेरी होगी
कब्र का खौफ न रखना है दिल
कब्र का खौफ न रखना है दिल वहाँ सरकार के चेहरे की जियारत होगी नाते सरकार.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to News in Focus live on Radio Al Ansar International, broadcasting on the frequency Durban 90.4 FM, Pirmaz by 105.6 FM, and audio streaming on www.alansar.org.za. Before the break, we were chatting with Mr. Yunus Suleiman, a chartered accountant, chairman of various portfolios, and he gave us a bit of a background about his qualifications, his experiences, and encouragement to our budding chartered accountants that the door is open for opportunities, excel in the different opportunities, and you can add value to the financial portfolios of various companies. So later on in the program, we will have another chartered accountant economist joining us, Hassan Mutala, and Hassan will chat more about the prospects of the economic situation post-GNU. But I have live with me in the studio Brother Ahmed Mansoor Sheikh Imam, a former MP of the National Freedom Party and the president of AM4C, which organization was contesting the last elections. Unfortunately, his particular party did not achieve the required number to get a seat in the provincial and national legislature, and there could be various reasons for that. We'll unpack that with Ahmed Mansoor shortly. I want to mention that the show is interactive, and we welcome your comments, which can be sent to us in the studio WhatsApp number 060-904-1056. So you can send your WhatsApps through if you have any queries. Now, President Cyril Ramaphosa will reveal his new cabinet for the seventh government in the coming days. Negotiations over positions with other political parties within Government of National Unity has delayed the announcement, and the delay is, as a result of various problems associated with the GNU. Uh, the situation is that the DA wants equitable power sharing within the newly formed GNU. Federal Council Chairperson Helen Zell believes that the ANC must acknowledge that the DA is a crucial partner and must be given a powerful position. What she mentioned is we can't be held to ransom. I mean, the DA is a very serious partner in this. We can't just be walking stick to help the ANC continue as it has done before. We have to be able to have some real influence and power in the government to make life better for South Africa, she says. So Helen Zell, who has been vocal on the nature of negotiations behind closed doors since the formation of the GNU, emphasized that a party can't be used as a crutch to support the ANC. So basically, South Africa now is awaiting the new cabinet, and indications are that the DA and the ANC and other sort of parties that are involved, they hit a snag, but obviously they're beginning to reach agreement as we go along. Now, while this has cast doubts about the GNU on the political front, the Johannesburg Stock Exchange says it has not dampened the capital market. So the RAND, we know, and later on we'll chat about it, has improved over its last 2 years' lows, and it's sitting at about 1823 and hit 1798 last week or so. And in the sort of economic markets, the LJ index has gone up quite a bit. The country's economic hub is still without the proper governments, but what is being said is they're waiting on the appointment of the cabinet post. In the two provinces that are heavily affected by the GNU is Gauteng and KZN. Now, KZN has already appointed its cabinet, with the premier being an IFP individual, and then there's various positions split with the different political parties. Gauteng, they are waiting to announce their cabinet, and also the mayor of KwaZulu-Natal is delayed, and critics are saying it's for the same reason. They need direction from the national government. Imam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to News in Focus live on Radio Al Ansar International.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and shukran for having me on the air this evening.
Imam, it's a pleasure having you here, because I know many a time you're not available because you are in Parliament, but I know those that have been sworn in are still sitting around waiting for their cabinet to be announced, so they're not active. So I'm not sure who's running government at the moment, Imam.
Very good question, yeah. And then I think the question we need to ask even further is this, the delay, and what does that mean for South Africa when the 62 million people are waiting in anticipation.
Now tell me, I mean, you've been in Parliament for more two sort of terms, and you know the workings. And in the past, the ANC was the majority party, so they could appoint the cabinet immediately after the elections, and it wasn't a problem. Now it's becoming a problem. I know in many countries where a similar situation arose, it took quite a while to appoint a cabinet after negotiations, but indications are that South Africa may not be as long delayed. It could be later this week that the announcement will take place, because I think they're reaching, sort of compromises, etc. Now, in terms of, the current administration, does the old administration run Parliament, or is Parliament in recess as we speak?
Yeah, Parliament is not sitting at this point in time. But I think what is important is that time is of essence. Given the difficulties that we're facing in the country currently, and I think the people of the country must understand it's not going to be easy to be able to decide and who are going to be the appointed cabinet ministers and things, because we find ourselves in a situation where political parties that are coming together have distinct differences in terms of policies, ideologies, vision, and things. And it's like bringing water and oil and mixing it up. So it's not an easy decision. And then the other problem I think one needs to be concerned about is this: how sincere is all the role players who are attempting to be part of this government of national unity? Are there any hidden agendas? Now, in the process, you find that many of them are demanding certain strategic positions, And the question that arises, that should those strategic positions, and perhaps I can break it down to you a little bit right now. Let's assume that the president decides to give the position of a deputy president to the DA in this case. Given the fact that there's already statements by Helen Ziller, already by Groenewald from the Freedom Front, that they will not let go of the Pala matter, all they will have to do is bring a vote of no confidence. Any one party can bring it, and remove President Cyril Ramaphosa, and then John Steenhuisen will, if the deputy president becomes the acting president. That's how simple
So
it is.
that's a risk that Cyril runs.
That's the risk Cyril runs. Now, exactly the same thing with the deputy president, Paul Mashatile, with the allegations against him too. So even if you have two deputy presidents, which you didn't have before, and they bring one against him too, you're going to have the same scenario.
Now, we want to come back to the discussion a little later. We'll unpack that a little bit later, some of the consequences of the GNU. But I just want to come back to your setup, Ahmed. Obviously, you were with NFP and you decided to form the AM4C in consultation with various stakeholders, of which you were nominated as the president. I'm not sure where you got the name from. I thought it was Ahmed Mansour 4C, or it's Allied Movement for Change. But you and your colleagues who were involved with this party were hopeful that you'll get a number of seats in national as well as in the provinces. You contested 3 provinces. Can you briefly tell us what went wrong so that, I still believe that 2026 is an opportunity for those that fell short to really emerge, because if there were problems with this election, obviously it's water under the bridge, and I know there's some legal matter being dealt with in terms of voter rigging, etc. But maybe for the benefit of our listeners who had a lot of confidence in you, what went wrong? In brief, Imam.
All right. First of all, let me tell you, one of the major challenges that we did experience was financial constraints. When you're in politics, particularly your elections, I always say, are won and lost on the day of the election. That is where a lot of corruption takes place. If you look at the rest of the country, you got particularly the union members that are presiding officers aligned to certain political parties. If you take the Western Cape, you have exactly the same situation. So the situation on the ground, one's got to be very careful. That's the first problem. We did not have enough time, but very importantly, we are not convinced that we didn't get the numbers. And the evidence that we have, and this has come from the people. Remember, we didn't have party agents all over. We are part and parcel of a process, and with many political parties that are still going to court, supporting the MK and many others. And this formation, I must admit, includes the ANC, the EFF, the MK, and everybody else, Al-Jamaa and all these parties. However, given the fact that the PA, Al-Jamaa, ANC, all these people have got some seats, they decided, after initially being part and parcel of lodging the objections, decided to back out from that. Okay? And because some of them, like the PA, says they're not willing to take the risk if there's a recount, because they might end up having a problem. Now,
they may lose whatever
they may even lose that. So many political parties might find them. Now, I must tell you, this is not one or two political parties that are just disgruntled about the number of votes you got. I could say, listen, I don't want to complain, alhamdulillah, and I want to say, jazakallah, thank you to all those that voted. 22,000 votes is what we got. But in 2 months, 2.5 months. But the number of calls that I've got with evidence where, and this is the only way we can pick them up, where we've got 0 votes in voting stations, and I can give you a whole list of them, even with names of people, have come and said, but we voted at those voting stations. Now, in 2021, I had a similar complaint from a voting station in Pelican Park. I ignored it. And now I realize that I did the wrong thing. Because now one of the officials of the IEC explained exactly how they were taking the votes of political parties and putting them aside. And this is an official of the IEC. But very importantly, I'll give you that political party called ARA, 178 objections. Now, what we find is that the votes were there at the voting station, they were counted, they were recorded. But there's a problem from there to the results center and where it is being captured. Now, some investigation that I have done says to me that auditing processes have been blocked to some extent. And more often than not, on the day of the election, the systems were off and on all the time, not forgetting the crash that you've even had. And further investigation led me to understand that those that were responsible, where the auditing department is, that were responsible for implementing, adding the numbers and reducing them and whatever, are sitting somewhere away where the auditors didn't even know. But auditors were not allowed to audit everything. Okay? Now, and if you saw at one stage, and I've got evidence for the shot of that, where a person that I know in Lansdowne in the Western Cape sent me and said, but what's going on here, Mansoor? Just now you had so many, but now it's reduced, and sends me both of the screenshots. So if I listen to all the political parties that are still continuing with this objection and this matters in court, together with the MK and others, there is substantial evidence that the elections was rigged, planned prior to the elections.
Now, coming back to that part, I know the matter is going to court. There are allegations. Do you expect anything to come of this in court, or will it just end off nowhere?
You know, politics is about selfishness, it's about greed, it's about own interest. Why would any political parties who have already got seats be interested in those who didn't get them? I mean, there is an ideal example. These are all the political parties that were part of the process that lodged objections, and they're backing out now because some of them don't want to risk it.
Now, I noticed MK is still continuing, and they're still disillusioned about it to such an extent that they didn't attend the opening of parliament.
MK is, AM4C is, ARA is, SARA is, all these parties, UDM, all these parties
But
have
UDM
lodged.
is now part of the
But-
GNU.
But they all lodged objections.
So they believe they've been done down in the
26
voting.
political parties have signed the documents, and I can make you have a look at that. The question is, why would anybody, like I said, the PA, I'll give you one good example. We had a call from a lady in Pretoria. I don't even know who she's up to today. And she's a independent observer. And she contacted us to say to us, listen, there's a problem here. I'm an independent observer. I've made notes of all the results, and I see your 90 votes for the national has been given to the PA. She said, listen, it could have been a mistake because people were working long hours, but this is the information, and you've got 90 votes that was given.
Which area was this?
In Pretoria.
Okay.
All right. We don't know who she is, but she sent us sworn affidavits. I've got, I think, about 10 or 15 sworn affidavits from people all over the country. Of course, some of them have not sent in, but there's about 10 or 15 sworn affidavits of people confirming that they voted at certain voting stations, and they're showing that there's 0 votes. If you take, I'll give you a good example, Benoni in Springs. And we had a call from a 77-year-old person there. He says that we voted in all 3 ballot papers for you, but it's only showing on the regional, not showing on the provincial and national. And I think it was 63 or 70 votes. Just in the one voting station, he says. Now, remember, if these people don't come back to us, we're not going to know because we didn't have party agents there to check. Fortunately for other parties, they've had party agents there. They've had a record of them. They picked them all up.
Now, based on the feedback, I know we're closing up with the news shortly, Imam. It is clear that a lot of the small parties are disillusioned, including some of the bigger parties, that their votes haven't been counted correctly, not captured correctly at the nerve center, and consequently the smaller parties lost off on a seat or 2. Because what's the threshold? You need about 45,000 votes to get a seat?
No, in fact, because of, you see, that's again, there's a question there as to how many people really voted. If you're finding there's ballot boxes being found all over that have not been opened and a whole lot that's picking, look at the number of times it's.
No, I know those are allegations which obviously is still being investigated, but IEC declared the elections free and fair, so obviously they listened to the objections. But the question I'm asking, Imam, and before we break for the news, is what is the minimum number of votes you need to get a seat at national
That it depends on the number of people that voted. I'll give you a good example. There are political parties that got 27,000 votes and got a seat.
Now, 16.5 million out of the 27 million voted, which is less than 60%.
Yeah,
so the voter turnout was very low compared to prior years. And that is also questionable given the number of people that were in the voting stations. Now, whoever was involved in what, we don't know the reality, because IC were given the task and they declared it's free and fair, and there's a court matter that's being dealt with. To achieve a minimum, you say some parties got 27 or 28,000 and they got a seat. Like Al Jama. What did Al Jama get?
Good party got one at what, about 27,000 or 28,000. Al Jama had 30 some odd thousand, and they ended up with two seats. Yeah,
and you got 22,000 and you got nothing.
We didn't.
So you're questioning how were the seats allocated?
No. I'm not questioning how they were allocated, because there's a fractional system that they actually use. So no, we're not.
But what you're saying is based on the people that phoned and said they voted and their votes were not captured. You're of the view that you definitely would have got a few seats had those votes been captured. Based on the feedback.
Without any doubt, my estimation is that the Allied Movement for Change have lost about 100,000 votes countrywide.
As much as that countrywide. Eh?
If you look at, we've never contested 6 of the other 9 provinces. But each one of those provinces, we got an average of about 1,500 votes.
So I think let's close on that note on this subject of concerns raised as in terms of the INC, and let the legal process take its
But all that I just wanted to touch. There is this perception out there that the Muslim population did not come out to vote.
We'll chat about that after the news break. We'll take a break for the news, and inshallah after the news break, we'll do a further analysis on the GNU, the appointment of executives, and as Imam pointed out, will that work and what are the consequences?
An informative Islamic global perspective. This is Al Ansar News.
Making news this hour, the 26th of June, the news from Durban, 90.4 FM, Pietermaritzburg, 105.6 FM. Local media says Durban mother and son are among the dead on Hajj pilgrimage. America Munina. Media report says a Durban mother and a son are among 5 South Africans who have died during the Hajj in Saudi Arabia. The Department of International Relations confirmed the deaths yesterday. The department says none of them died as a result of extreme heat that has claimed over 1,300 lives over the recent pilgrimage period. 59-year-old Shireen Khan and a 27-year-old son Ibrahim Khan of Overport died days apart last week. Mufti Zubair Bayat, who was part of the Hajj group, says Ibrahim died of a suspected heart attack before the pilgrimage began, leaving his mother devastated. Shireen fell ill 5 days later and passed away at a clinic in the Saudi Kingdom. Bayat says that both mother and son were buried in Makkah at a special graveyard for pilgrims. Shaheen Isap from the South African Hajj and Umrah Council says there is comfort knowing their final resting place is sacred. Monet's political parties are advised today that there are 4 more days to remove election campaign posters off the streets of Etegwini. Local media says if they do not act accordingly, they may incur a fine. The city's executive committee decided in December last year, 2023, that parties would be fined almost 1,200 rands per poster if they do not remove them within 30 days after the elections. The municipality says once the deadline is reached, it will take down the posters and fine the parties based on the number of posters that are still up. Now, this applies to campaign material on electricity, street poles, and any other municipal infrastructure, as well as political advertisements on highways and the beachfronts. Political parties were allowed to have 800 posters per ward in the lead up to last month's elections. More news, the SACP, the South African Communist Party, is berating what it calls the DA's trickery and untenable demands. The SACP says the party is trying to secure a hostile takeover through a grand coalition. The Communist Party says the DA is trying to wield veto power through the sufficient consensus clause. The SACP's Alex Mashilo says President Ramaphosa should ignore the demands of the DA and appoint his cabinet.
The DA has actually declined by a minimum of 100,000 votes. That's the minimum. The ANC is not the only political party that has declined. There is a fractional increase, however, by the IFP, but it's fractional. And that's why the IFP remains almost where it was before. And facing the situation that it faces, the DA has been trying through trickery to say, no, we want this grand coalition. So they use the word government of national unity, but their behavior is that of a grand coalition in which the DA exercises a veto right. That is an attempt at an undemocratic takeover, and it is an attempt also to undermine the will of the people. It must be rejected. It must not see the light of the day. We are not going to agree with it. We will continue to mobilize against it.
Your international story, the President Recep Tayyip Erdogan of Turkey is warning the West against patting Israel on the back for planning to attack Lebanon, possibly igniting a catastrophic regional conflict. Erdogan said earlier today that Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel is now setting sights on Lebanon. Erdogan says that Netanyahu plans to spread the war to the region, which will lead to a great disaster. Netanyahu earlier in the week said that the regime's military forces are winding up most intense part of the offensive in the Gaza Strip and will be able to redeploy to the northern border. The United States, Israel's staunch ally, claimed that it is urgently working towards a diplomatic agreement that would de-escalate tensions at the Lebanese border, but at the same time, it reassured its ironclad commitment to Tel Aviv. Your weather, it's 22 degrees. A quick reminder of our top story. Media reports says that Durban mother and son are among 5 South Africans who have died during the Hajj in Saudi Arabia. The Department of International Relations confirmed the deaths. That's the news.
The Watch Doctor. For watch repairs, watch batteries, watch straps, 21st keys, engraving, and sound for your occasion. Handled professionally at 263 Sparks Road, Mohammedia Center, Suite 104, Overport, next to the Sparks Road Masjid. Contact Zain on 082 542 3070. The Watch Doctor. The Watch Doctor. Keeping time every time.
At this time of trial and worry, the blessings of charity are the ideal means to avoid calamity and despair. The Al Imdad Foundation gives you the opportunity to sponsor a share in a borehole in South Africa for just 1,000 Rand and provide what the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, called the best form of charity. Donate online at alimdad.com or call 0861 786 243 for more information.
Hey there, Durban. Get ready for the best winter shopping event. It's time to shop till you drop at the Durban Shopping Fest from the 5th to 7th July. We've got it all from trendy fashion to jaw-dropping deals. This is the perfect place to be. Picture yourself strolling through aisles of your favorite stores, discovering hidden gems and snagging those must-have items while having a phenomenal variety of the best cuisine waiting for you in our food court. Don't miss out on the Durban Shopping Fest. Join us at Saxony Westwood Mall and let the shopping spree begin. Store bookings now open.
Mola, 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 mere Mola. Har saal talab farma mujhko. Har saal wo shehr dikha mujhko. Har saal wo shehr dikha mujhko. Har saal karoon main tawaaf haram. Allah karam, Allah karam, Allah karam, Allah karam. ऐ खुदा हज पर बुला ले, ऐ खुदा हज पर बुला ले, हाजियों में नाम लिख दे. ऐ खुदा हज पर बुला ले, हाजियों में नाम लिख दे. काबे का जलवा दिखा दे, काबे का जलवा दिखा दे हाजियों में नाम लिख दे लब्बैक अल्लाहुम्मा लब्बैक अल्लाहुम्मा लब्बैक अल्लाहुम्मा लब्बैक लब्बैक अल्लाहुम्मा लब्बैक अल्लाहुम्मा लब्बैक अल्लाहुम्मा लब्बैक आंसू आंसू कर रहे हाजिरी की इल्तिजा आंसू आंसू कर रहे हाजिरी की इल्तिजा अपने घर पर तू बुला ले अपने घर पर तू बुला ले हाजियों में नाम लिख दे ऐ खुदा हज पर बुला ले हाजियों में नाम लिख दे मुझको पहुंचा दे खुदा फिर से बता फिर पाक में मुझको पहुंचा दे खुदा फिर से मताफ़े पाक में और मुझे ज़मज़म पिला दे और मुझे ज़मज़म पिला दे हाजियों में नाम लिख दे काबे की रौनक काबे का मंजर अल्लाहु अकबर देखूं तो देखे जाऊं बराबर अल्लाहु अकबर तेरे हरम की क्या बात मौला तेरे करम की क्या बात मौला ताउमर कर दे जाना मुकद्दर ताउमर कर दे जाना मुकद्दर अल्लाहु अकबर हर रुकावट दूर कर दे वसाइल या खुदा हर रुकावट दूर कर दे वसाइल या खुदा खानाए काबा दिखा दे खानाए काबा दिखा दे हाजियों में नाम लिख दे खुदा हज पर बुला ले हाजियों में नाम लिख दे काबे का जलवा दिखा दे हाजियों में नाम लिख दे लब्बैक अल्लाहुम्मा लब्बैक अल्लाहुम्मा लब्बैक अल्लाहुम्मा लब्बैक लब्बैक अल्लाहुम्मा लब्बैक अल्लाहुम्मा लब्बैक अल्लाहुम्मा लब्बैक अहले खाना साथ हो हाज़िरी मकबूल हो अहले खाना साथ हो हाज़िरी मकबूल हो हर बरस यूं हज करा दे हर बरस यूं हज करा दे हर बरस यूं
The Al-Ansar Foundation, Dawah, Tarbiyah and Education, establishing the foundations of Islamic civilization in South Africa.
Listen to News in Focus on Radio Al-Ansar, Durban 90.4 and Peter Marisburg 105.6 FM every Wednesday from 8 p.m. with Yunus Sakur. That's 8 p.m. every Wednesday, Radio Al-Ansar, keeping you informed.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the final session of News in Focus live on Radio Al-Ansar International, broadcasting on the frequency Durban 90.4 FM, Peter Maritzburg 105.6 FM, and streaming on www.alansar.org.za. Before the news break, we were chatting with Brother Ahmad Mansoor Sheikh Imam from AM4C, and he was explaining what went wrong in his election process, and he indicated that there were some challenges relating to the counting of votes, and obviously in many areas the correct votes were not captured by the nerve centers, and that's being challenged from a legal perspective, and the sort of outcome is awaited. We will continue with that discussion, but what we want to focus on is an analysis of the GNU and the delay in the appointment of the cabinet. The South African rand weakened for a third day as traders awaited news on the appointment of a cabinet almost a month after elections stripped President Cyril Ramaphosa's party of its parliamentary majority. The ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula has chastised other political parties for making outrageous demands for cabinet positions. Mbalula said that the ANC was very concerned about the behavior of some leaders who were part of the government of national unity. The ANC notes with concern that some parties have been making outlandish and outrageous demands for specific cabinet positions in the media. Now, it's relevant to note that the voter turnout wasn't as anticipated, and that's also being challenged because there were massive queues all over the country during the election days. And unfortunately, the numbers don't tie up. And as Imam has mentioned, there's something sinister in terms of the counting process, but that has to be discussed on another day. But as we speak, there's keen awaiting on the announcement of the cabinet because indications are that the DA is indicating that they want a proportional number of cabinet posts allocated to them. Now, if you look at the percentage of the parties involved in the government of national unity, the ANC constitutes 40%, the DA 22%, MK is 15%, EFF is about 10% or 12%, and then you've got PA and other smaller parties. So proportional representation would mean that probably 40% of the cabinet post should go to the ANC and the others should be split amongst those that participated, because both the EFF and MK have not been part of the GNU, which means that more than 25% or 30% of the votes are not involved in the GNU. So 70% should be allocated to the parties. So what the DA is contesting is they want to get involved in some key positions. And the DA insists, they basically strongly condemning the ANC for its cadre deployment program. The DA says that its insistence on appointing its own candidates for top ministerial positions in government of national unity was to ensure that they hired the best people for the job and not cadre deployment. So having requested that they want to be involved in the appointment of, director generals into as support staff to the cabinet positions, basically what the DA's Richard Newton argued, that there was a difference between employing someone because you are related and someone who is fit for the job. And when we interviewed Brother Yunus Suleiman earlier on, he mentioned that it's crucial you appoint the right people for the positions. DA's Richard Newton went on further to say that the quest to appoint the best person for the job, whomsoever that may be, was very different from the ANC's cadre deployment. He said that the ANC would place people who were utterly incompetent into departments that crumble due to incompetence. Now, what this means is that if in government and the director generals are appointed to run particular departments, and they appoint directors under them and personnel under them, and those are the individuals that drive the process of service delivery at a government level. And if they're all incompetent and linked up to the cabinet minister, this is one of the recipes for potential maladministration and corruption. So what the DA has indicated, together with the other smaller parties, that if we've been given positions, it mustn't be docile positions or positions of non-importance. They want to be involved in portfolios that will make a difference in service delivery in the country. And in a way, what they're saying is that will improve the status of government in terms of what the intention are. They're not there for the position, but they're there to ensure that the wrongs of the past are corrected. So I want to bring in Ahmed Mansour back into the discussion. Ahmed, you were in Parliament for the last 10 years, and obviously part of your observation is that cabinet ministers were appointing DGs and other prominent individuals into various portfolios because they're the delivery arm of those cabinet. For example, the Minister of Police will appoint commissioners and senior personnel staff in the different provinces to ensure that those police officers do their work. But if they're incompetent and they're corrupt, then you're going to have a marked decline in service delivery in the police force, and that applies to all other portfolios. Perhaps you want to comment on that, Ahmed?
Well, let me first of all say this, that if you want, I think there's also a policy issue here. So whilst the DA, and I think rightfully so, if they are part and parcel of a government of national unity, believe that they should enjoy the privilege of having a few, of course, cabinet ministers and things. I think that's what government of national unity is. It's about sharing, isn't it? And I must agree that the issue of cadre deployment in the country is a serious crisis. I've raised this over 50 times, I think, in Parliament. Two things, very importantly. One is the cadre deployment, where people are not fit for purpose. And secondly, and very importantly, of course, and that is procurement, where we don't get value for money, losing an estimated 500 billion rand a year in the country. So those are major problems. Question is, what portfolios are we talking about? Will President Ramaphosa be willing to give justice? He can't. Can he give police? He can't. Can he give finance? He can't.
Deputy President, he can't.
Give deputy president? He can't. Defense? He can't.
Now, how many positions are there in the cabinet? 30.
Well, that's where I want to come now. That's where I want to come. Strange enough, what I'm not hearing from the DA, which we've heard time and time again in Parliament, that we should reduce the size of the cabinet. They've been raising that time and time again, and suddenly nobody is talking about raising this, reducing the size of the cabinet now, because positions
what
are
is
up for grabs.
the number of positions in the cabinet?
Well, there's 42 departments alone.
So there's 42
you've got
cabinet ministers.
You've got deputy
How many
ministers?
cabinet ministers were appointed in the last election?
Ministers themselves? Well,
Yes,
each
cabinet
department,
ministers.
each department
Was
has
it
got
30
its
or
own.
35 or 40?
It's about 34, I think it was. Yeah.
34.
Yeah.
So what the DA is saying is they want a percentage of the 34, but they want strategic posts. They
But
don't want the minimal posts like culture and recreation and those ones.
But remember, it's not only the DA that's going to want that. All political parties are part of the government
The
of National
Patriotic Alliance
Unity.
is saying they want the Minister of Police.
They said they want, and now
Oh, Minister of Home Affairs.
and where does he come from?
Now, there was a fake list of appointments that was
Yeah.
circulating where Bantu Olamiza as UDM was appointed somewhere.
Defense was.
Defense and whatever.
Yeah.
So what you're telling us now is the ANC have the majority of votes, which is 40%, and they won the prime positions. And they want to allocate the rest to the other parties.
No, I think we need to be a bit more realistic about this. You know, the most important point here is that we're dealing with political parties that have significant differences in terms of policies, ideologies, and things. Now, I'll give you a good example. The DA is not interested in minimum wage. The ANC is. The ANC pushes BEE, which created 17,500 millionaires and multimillionaires. The DA says no. The ANC is pro-NHI. The DA is saying it's no. These are just a handful of
But the former, public protector, Madunzela, is mentioning that policies that are in place, they're not going to re-look at it. They have to go ahead with those policies. So Ramaphosa is cited to have signed a lot of these bills before the elections, so which means that they're binding on the new government. So how would the DA want to change all that?
Well, first of all, the ANC only has 40%. So there's 60% up for grabs in any event. Let us not forget that. I'll go one step.
Now, let's give an example while you're on that point. Let's assume they want to reverse or change the NHI and you go on a vote. Now, the MK and EFF were in support together with the ANC. So they'll get the majority if they but the DA now will be cited for being not part of the GNU if they change. Because I know there's been a statement of intent, a legal document that has been signed where they will comply. And that was proven when they were appointing the state president and the speaker, where the DA supported the ANC's motion. And likewise, the ANC supported the DA's motion for a deputy speaker. So the DA has mentioned that they want the country to prosper. And I think our guest that was Yunus mentioned in the inauguration, Ramaphosa made that he wants it to work and they're going to have to compromise. So I've read a recent report that's come through where they're close to finalizing and reaching agreement on the appointment of cabinet ministers. And what is coming through, and this seems to be, sometimes rumors are sort of correct, is that Ramaphosa has given in to some of the demands of the DA in that certain of the requests have been complied with. Others, they reached an agreement because they don't want this GNU to fall through or break up. So would there be a compromise in terms of Cyril's approach to the GNU and the appointment of cabinet ministers?
Well, first of all, I think President Ramaphosa finds himself in a very difficult situation. Whether he goes in with the GNU, with the DA and others, or whether he decides to go and work with the MK and the EFF.
Well, listen, there are talks that MK and EFF are wanting to come to the party, but it's highly risky because he cannot collapse the GNU. Then this whole thing will be one big circus. And as we indicated, there may have been some discussions before elections on this GNU, and there were rumors that the ANC would align with the DA. So there's been long-standing talks, and because of foreign investment into the country and the influence of the West in politics of South Africa, they want a successful South Africa, and they believe that you need proper governance and administration. So the progressive members of the NEC of the ANC would really want to make sure this GNU works. And if voluntarily EFF or MK come to the party, then they may add to the government of national union. And if they don't, there will be the opposition. But it would be disappointing and surprising from an economic perspective if this GNU falls through. So what you're saying is, the question I'm asking, they said that it could be another day or so, even hours, that he can suddenly call up an urgent public meeting and say, these are my announcements. Because the prerogative is the president. He could take the decision. So nobody can stop that because he's got the authority to decide. Although he's negotiating, but ultimately he will take the decision. There may be who's and ha's from the other political parties, but they're going to have to accept it. And if they walk out, they could be embarrassed. What's your take on that?
Well, I wouldn't say that they will be embarrassed. Remember, they entered into negotiation in good faith.
Correct.
I think let me start off by saying, if you remember not long ago, I said in Parliament, I raised concerns about grade 8 learners not being able to read for meaning. And strange enough, we find now the DA, Helen Ziller, giving Mbalula a lesson to say he can't understand what he's been reading in the agreement, and she's been referring to him. So it's not only the grade
not surprising that has happened.
So it's not only the grade learners that couldn't read for meaning, even Mbalula, the Secretary General, can't read
but
for
he's
meaning.
better than the previous one, who was our friend from Free State.
But remember, government of national unity, first of all, I think one needs, and I've asked this and I've said this before, how sincere are all those political parties that they really want what is best for the country? Is there any hidden agendas? And there's a lot at stake here. I mean, on the one hand, you're talking about a government of national unity, which you signed. On the other hand, Helen Ziller and Groenewald from the Freedom Front are talking about holding President Ramaphosa accountable as far as the Pala scandal is concerned.
Now,
so
we want to come back to that. I know I'm deferring that discussion,
Okay.
but I want to come back to that point from another angle. I want to bring in Hassan in shortly. Following the DA's intention of getting 12 cabinet ministers posts, including that of deputy president in the government of national unity, the ANC says that President Cyril Ramaphosa has the final word of appointment of the cabinet. Critics are optimistic that he will make the appointment, and everybody will have to agree. Maybe there may be some disagreements, but they will have to give it an opportunity to work. I want to bring you in, and I'll bring you back, Ahmad, on the discussion about those possible allegations and downfalls in the GNU. Hassan, the RAN has weakened because obviously they're waiting on these cabinet appointments, and obviously they're concerned about the continuation of the GNU. And that has far-reaching implications on KZN and Gauteng, which is also hanging in the balance. Now, is it normal for the markets? They haven't gone too bad. The RAN from 1795 is sitting at 1829, so it's not too bad, which is 1 rand better than what it was a couple of months ago. What's your take? Do you think the markets still are confident that the GNU will work and the cabinet posts will be appropriately appointed by President Ramaphosa?
Sure. I think if you look at over the past 2 weeks since obviously the results and the talks around the GNU, largely there's been optimism from the market's perspective. So both from the equity markets, we were at record highs last week at close to 82,000, back to just under 80,000 at the moment, the JSE. And the rand strengthened, a fair amount over but it's back to around, as you said, the above the 18 rand, 1815 level or so. I think a couple of key things. Both markets and investors, both locally, globally, they like some form of certainty. People don't like uncertainty. And we see it in all elections that have taken. We talked about last week, three major emerging market elections that taken place over the past month: India, Mexico, South Africa. And in every case of those three, there were surprises. Negative surprise in India, negative surprise in Mexico, and South Africa negative surprise. Initially, markets reacted negatively, but slowly as things emerge and there's some form of negotiations that are like in South Africa's case, where the GNU is being involved, and more so now, the GNU now represents 70% of the voting, those that have voted. 70% of the voted, the parties are being represented in the GNU. Yes, they're going to have definitely completely or very different ideologies in many things. Whether it's Palestine, especially, for example, the ANC and the DA are completely misaligned on that, completely. But there's going to have to be some form of sort of give and take. That's going to happen. We must expect give and take that will take place in this year. I definitely don't think 12 cabinet positions are going to be in the DA's.
Probably half of that.
Helen Zille is always, as they call her, Godzilla. She
So
thinks
probably
she can,
she'll get six out of the 12.
I would say between 6 to 8 will probably.
She may get
to
2 strategic and 4 non.
Correct. So I think there's a couple of the key strategic areas, as Brother Mansoor highlighted earlier. A couple of the key areas,
Defense,
justice,
police.
defense, are not going to be given to them. There's going to be obviously important.
Even finance too, maybe.
Even finance, I think the markets love the current finance minister.
Well, maybe deputy finance minister.
Potentially a deputy finance minister. Secondly, I think you're going to find that the other parties are going to be incorporated, but they will be given small one position here, maybe one position there. Maybe the IFP, it just depends. But I think one position at most for all of the rest of the parties. I think highly unlikely more than that, because 10 parties you try and please, you're going to have to do both the DA and the ANC will have to give and take in many areas there. What is important though, and you highlighted it earlier, Eunice, as well, the president did pass through many laws and bills before the election. Very difficult and long process again to change it later on. Takes time a lot. Whether you want a motion and this, those things all take time again.
Probably as part of the negotiate process that those
Correct.
mustn't be tampered with.
And I think, you know what, in his mind and in many of the others in the NEC, they were anticipating this, that they potentially would be at a stage where they're going to have to be in a coalition. And to do that, let us make sure that we get some of our ducks in a row and sort them out. Secondly, don't underestimate what has happened. If you look at over the last 3 years, we've complained, obviously, and rightfully so, that when Ramaphosa took over from 2018, there was huge expectations, Ramaphoria, all of that. The rand strengthened, markets went strongly, and then poof, after that, markets came back. Rand's been on a downward trend ever since then. However, what we underestimated, firstly, the impact of the Zuma era in terms of the corruption and the systemic issues in both the state enterprises and many of the institutions, including SARS, including NPA, all of that they were very deeply rooted. And it takes time to sort that out. And slowly, SARS is sorted out. SARS is now running probably one of the most efficient state organs currently. NPA has taken a lot of time, but I think there's slowly some momentum coming through in that side. But the key areas to make this economy grow, and what is the key factors, is basically Eskom and Transnet. Eskom, we've talked about, yes, that they've had these issues, but the benefit of public and private partnership has started to come through. Remember, these tax incentives we had for individuals, for corporates to spend on solar and the like. The benefits of that are slowly starting to come through, and you're seeing it. In fact, the end result of this is that because Eskom is seeing less usage of their power, they're talking about a 36% increase that they want to put through for electricity, which is madness. But nonetheless, they're talking about 36% increase that they're asking for this coming year. It's ridiculous, but it's highlighting the fact that many corporates and private individuals are going off the grid using solar and alternative energy to power their businesses and power their homes. With the result, people talked about, hey, they were waiting on 30th of May when the load shedding notices are going to come on ESCOM's a push. We're going to get load shedding notice. We now, what's today's date? Today is the 26th of June. We haven't had load shedding. We haven't had load shedding
there's
since
excess of
then.
supply in the grid.
So I think there's a balance of supply, despite the fact that we're in the heart of winter. We're in the heart of winter now. 26th of June, we're already in winter, and we haven't. Demand normally picks up
And
massively
isn't
during
there
this
better
period.
efficiency in the control of electricity now? They brought back some retired engineers, etc.
I am not. I still. I think time will tell on that part. Time will tell. I think there's a lot that's come off the grid in terms of the solar, and that's helping that. That's helping. And yes, maybe the maintenance has improved and there's less sabotage and the like. We don't know. But let's see. We've got but the benefit of this is that the fact that less load shedding means more economic growth. Last year was a terrible year, one of the worst years ever in terms of load shedding we've ever had. And it impacted our GDP. This year, we're going to bet because of that negative impact. And this year, the positive impact on electricity, there'll be a positive impact in terms of economic growth.
Hassan, I just want to narrow our discussion whereby there was positive sentiment and we were hoping it would be more positive. Suddenly there's a bit of a lull because of the delay in the announcement of the cabinet post. So the markets are responding to an improved South African economy, improved South African administration, by virtue, no matter what you say about the Democratic Alliance, but they proved in the Western Cape that they're administrating effectively. And I was in local government, and I'm not praising them. I'm saying even the non-whites were effective agents of service delivery, the Indian coloreds, including the whites, and many Africans as well, because these were well-managed government departments and municipalities. What crept in the last 10 years is the issue of maladministration, cadre deployment, and inefficient people appointed, which culminated in politicians being involved in maladministration, corruption, and billions of rands have been lost. Now, the country is aware of the scourge, and what they're doing now is to say, let's bring in an inclusive government and we will minimize maladministration, resulting in improved service delivery and you're getting value for money in your buck. So the economic sectors will react when you got the right role players. And obviously there's a small lull because they're waiting for the cabinet post. Now, I'm aware that Ramaphosa is no fool because he was part of CODESA when he was negotiating, and he doesn't have to be the president because he's a billionaire in his own right, together with some of his family members. And some people say that he's been governed by the business sector, including a lot of these Jewish companies, etc. But be that as it may, I think when they accepted this GNU, the statement of intent was, as Yunus said, is maturity. Let's do what's best for the country. We had enough in the last 30 years of this nonsense. Now, from an economic perspective, being an economist, do you firmly believe that Ramaphosa will pull this one out and reach a compromise in the appointment of cabinet ministers? I'll ask Imam to come in on that later. But from an economic perspective, do you think he will think progressively for the benefit of the country?
I think he has no option but to do that. He's as Yunus said, he's between a rock and a hard place. You either go to the left side, which is the MK and the FF, or you're going on the right-hand side.
He's chosen the right.
He's chosen the right, and he will make compromise.
He has to compromise.
He has to compromise. But he will keep many of the strategic, as much as he can, he will keep many of the strategic cabinet posts within the ANC. That he will do.
Now, I want to hold you there. Is Steenhuisen, who is the leader of the Democratic Alliance. He was a councillor in eThekwini Municipality back in the day. You remember him, Imam? He was with the National Party at that stage. He's grown from strength to strength. Helen Zille is a bit of a mouthpiece. But he indicated clearly, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that we are not here for the post. We are here to take South Africa forward. And we want to ensure, because we were looking forward as being the opposition in the past, to correct all these imbalances and this corruption and maladministration. And now that we're in government, we'll be able to monitor and guide government towards a more better government. So him having that in mind, obviously he will have to compromise on his side to say, okay, we demanded X, we're getting Y. Let's accept it and run, because they don't want the GNU to fail, because these were discussions with the so-called, Moonshot Pact before that, and the IFP being, and they're also concerned about KZN, where MK has gained a large majority here, 45%, and Gauteng is also a hung government and local government, and it has its impact in all sectors, because there's, beside the Western Cape being a DA and ANC having their 6 of their 9, and they're going to have to manage those processes because local government elections are coming up 2026. So do you believe that the bigger parties in the GNU will ensure that it works and don't have a situation where it collapses halfway through? That we will bring Imam in on the issue of Groeneveld and Steene isn't saying, I'll bring Pala Pala back, I'll bring this other thing back. Sure. And will that really happen? Or, what will cause it to happen? So on your side, Hassan.
I think both of them are looking at it. They definitely look at the big picture. This is the first time in 30 years they've got the opportunity now to get back as a part of the governing, to govern South Africa and to make a positive impact. If they're fighting only for cabinet posts, then they can be clearly called out as hypocrites, because their whole election motto and everything before that was we were fighting for.
I want to interrupt there. What the DA is saying is that we just don't want to be crutches for the ANC, and we want to be awarded some strategic posts, which I think Ramaphosa will consider, because he doesn't want them that we are holding 40%, that we must take the key positions and you guys must take the Minister of Sport, Recreation, and the minor posts.
Correct.
Posts like Minister of Human Settlements and other strategic posts, they're going to have to share. Somewhere along, like what happened in KZN, the Minister of Finance was given to the DA, and the Minister of Infrastructure and Public Works was given to the DA, and those are strategic posts.
Correct.
So the point I'm making is IFP took the premier. They're going to have to consider that this will break up if they don't settle the other side.
Correct. I think where there's going to be definitely compromise. I think you're right. More of the posts will go towards the ANC. Some other posts, important posts, will also go to the. I think DA will push a lot more for the DGs. They will push for the DGs. And that is an area where they could
they'll
be
push for the DGs where their cabinet ministers
ministers, but
because the ANC cabinet ministers won't want to appoint DA DGs. But the DA is saying it doesn't have to be them responsible. There must be a panel that must decide to appoint the best person for the job.
Which would maybe not be a bad thing. You want effectively the best person for the job.
Well, listen, generally how it works, and Imam will correct us, is that if a cabinet minister is linked to a particular party, he generally brings his own individuals as DGs. What the DA is saying is have a tribunal or a panel that interviews those posts, but ultimately those posts have to be approved by the president as well. The director generals, including the mayors of the various municipalities. So I suppose the president will have a look to make sure the right people are appointed.
One key thing I just want to highlight, Eunice, is that from the market and investor, both foreign and local and the like, there is an improvement in terms of confidence. You can see it in terms of potential for private investment to pick up in the country. There's already indications, and there has been, by putting the energy aside that we've seen in the last 2 to 3 years, you are seeing potential big developments, whether it's the Amazons coming into the country, whether it's a Club Med setting up a big resort up in the North Coast as well. There's a lot more of that happening. Very importantly, though, markets will look for improvement in terms of stability of policy and stability in terms of what you call this on the fiscal side. The fiscal side is going to be key. Now, a bloated government cabinet is obviously what we currently got, and I don't think there's going to be much change in terms of the cabinet positions being. Although the DA talked about 15 cabinet positions prior, that they would, in terms of reducing it, I think we're going to remain at 30 cabinet ministers and probably another 30 deputy ministers per se. Very importantly, though, is the key focus. What the markets and the like focuses on is that they want to see a stability in terms of our fiscal position, our expenditure easing, our debt to GDP coming off, and they want to see that will have a massive impact, firstly, on the rand. It will have a massive impact in terms of our borrowing, because what the result is, at the moment, we're paying 20 cents for every rand that's collected is going towards interest. Now imagine, as we save on that interest costs, the more that you get, the more that will go to, in terms of saving on the interest, the more that will go towards education, healthcare, and the like. And that's a key focus, I think, that this government will need to focus on. You're right. They have to focus on the benefit, but as human as they are, and at the end of the day, everyone's got some agenda that they will pursue. They're going to try and get as best as they can for their particular parties, but they will compromise. Both the DA, both the ANC, there will be give and takes given, but by and large, I'm of the view that majority of the key strategic positions will remain with the ANC.
Now, I'm just going to go through a couple of SMSs that have come through, or messages. Salams to all. Yes, the DA has always complained about cadre deployment, but now they are requesting certain posts. For example, I think, if I heard correctly, on another station, they're eager for Justice Department portfolio. But why not the Police Department portfolio? I think they requested the Police Department as well. There's a question for you, Brother Imam Sheikh. Did you report the IEC issues about your loss of the organization? I believe you did. You're part of that legal action that's being taken. Am I right?
Yes, it is. We've sent in objections. We've even received responses. They don't believe it will make any material difference. This is the response, the standard response that the IEC is giving to
Because
all political
there are
parties
allegations
that are
that the
lodging
justice system has been captured as well.
well, that's where it is. I mean, who's the electoral court? Who appoints the electoral court? Who appoints the judges? Who appoints all the Chapter 9 institution? It's the president himself.
So what he's saying here is basically all the smaller parties, he's calling them squibs, won't make a dent in politics except to be kingmakers and praise singers. I think a lot of guys will be praise singers. Imam, I want to bring you back on the discussion you had, which I deferred, which I thought would be an appropriate time to bring it in, is that in the next couple of days or hours, or maybe sometime tomorrow, or maybe Thursday or whatever, we could have a situation where, the president will make his announcement, because indications are that he's agreed on the cabinet post. But before we do that, there's a brother that sent in a message now to say that, Assalamu alaikum, Brother Yunus, we have the right president in place to negotiate the GNU. There's a reality the tri-party alliance will be tested regarding positions within government. The DA and IFP is going to pressure Ramaphosa to replace this cadres. They're already talking strike action. Best of luck, DA, ANC and IFP, to finally help SA from unionist government. The MPs from the opposition is a concern to South Africa. State capture and radical thinkers are amongst them, going to be committee members. God help South Africa. Ayub Rahman, Peter Marisbeck, shukran to read my opinion, which I've read out. So basically, many people are saying that, and I was going to ask you that question, a very interesting comment from Ayuba in Peter Marisburg, and I'm glad PMberg is listening to us. There's a lot of listeners out there. The point I'm making is that these guys are going to be oppositions. MK, who constitute 15% of the electorate. EFF, I think, is 9%, if I'm correct. So 23% will be backbenchers. These are former ANC cadres or ANC activists that have swung because of disillusionment. Indications are they were part of the problem guys involved in all the maladministration, etc., and it's cited in the state capture report. But be that as it may, a couple of key issues. You touched on some of the issues about Ramaphosa and Palapala and the state president on his allegations. But there's also some recommendations in the state capture report. And I know Zondo is standing down soon. He's going to be replaced. But he made a lot of recommendations. And those recommendations were against certain MPs and politicians that are now currently with MK, including Jacob Zuma. The question is, will the criminal action be taken by GNU against those individuals? Because the DA will be pushing for criminal action to the NPA.
Yes, but I think then the DA also will have to be consistent in their argument of pushing, because then they're going to have to push against the president himself. They're going to have to push against the deputy president, Paul Mashatile.
Listen, those two really haven't been tested in the court of law. There's no reports as such, besides a few. In fact, they've cleared Cyril of the Palapala. Further investigations we'll have to look at. But in terms of the state capture report by the Zondo Commission, it's clear-cut. They've done the investigations. They've come up with recommendations. So those have to be actioned.
Yes and no. You are correct that as far as the Zondo Commission, yes, indeed. And I think the government of national unity, particularly the ANC, in the last couple of months, has been accelerating that process of dealing with that, particularly of those that were not part and parcel of the Cyril Ramaphosa camp in any event. That's the first thing. The second thing, I think, and very important thing is that the DA, yes, indeed, will push for it as well. But the DA will have to be consistent in also pushing on the issue of the president, because remember, the parliament, by virtue of its majority enjoyed by the ANC, did not entertain the report.
Now, coming back to that,
yeah,
and our listeners want to hear this answer, is that 65 to 70% of the voters, or the percentage, is in favor of GNU, and 30% constitutes EFF, MK, and maybe one other party.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the DA would be foolish, being part of GNU, to push for those two issues, being part of GNU. Strategically, they won't want to raise it. But would the opposition parties raise it if they are now being charged criminally and their members are being charged? So if they raise it, what's the likelihood of them raising it? Number one, for example, MK saying that Cyril now must be charged or whatever, but there's no evidence to that effect because he's been cleared by the public protector. So even if they raise it and they say we want to move a motion to remove him as president, he's going to get 70% that's going to be against it. And the DA might have to turn their back on it.
Not necessarily, because the DA currently, if you listen to the statements made by Helen Ziller and the Freedom Front, they are pushing for the issue of Pala Pala. They've made it loud and clear again and again, including
but listen, when they
2 days ago.
When they asked Helen Ziller, she says if investigations are clear that he has been cited and there's a case to answer, then they cannot, avoid discussing the matter. But she didn't categorically say that they will ask for a reinvestigation. The question that I'm raising is that I'm working on the assumption that the president is going to make his cabinet announcements soon. Could be a day, could be half a day, could be a couple of hours, could be tomorrow. Inevitable, he will have to make that announcement, because to make the GNU work, taking the country forward and creating a positive sentiment, your opposition is going to be MK and EFF, who hold a decent percentage of the votes as opposition. Many of them are cited for maladministration, corruption, and could be charged, including the former state president. Those charges will continue. If they raise this issue and they move for the removal of the president, they may not get the desired support in the interest of national unity.
They may not get it, but they may get it as well. The DA continues to push for that. Now, how is the DA, who's been pushing for it all this time,
they will
suddenly decide that no, we're not going to support it, because they have been very vocal about it?
Well,
the Freedom Front has just made a statement that they will want it.
Both of them form the part of national unity and a statement of intent to say that we will support each other. So it will be foolish of them to really
the corruption,
because they supported the appointment of the president, knowing very well that this allegation is still there, but he's been cleared. And what the government is saying, that until proven guilty, they're still in positions. And if the man is criminally charged or the woman is criminally charged, like for example, Zodwa is back. Now he's saying he was found not guilty and there's nothing. And even same with
I think we're talking about two different issues.
No, what position the government is taking is that if you criminally charged, that you can't.
No, but we are talking about two different issues about whether he is charged or not, and whether Parliament has the process and has the mandate and authority to bring a vote of no confidence based on the serious allegations. Right. These are two different issues.
Yes, I agree.
And this is what I'm talking about now. If the MK brings it, or the ATM brings it, or any of other political party brings it,
they have to go on a vote.
Yes, indeed. And remember, it puts the DA in a very difficult position, because they've been very vocal about this. Yes, you are correct that the DA may decide to back out, of course. In fact, they always said they'll never work with the ANC, and now they're willing to work with the ANC.
And also the fact that they supported the appointment of Cyril Ramaphosa as president, knowing well that these were the allegations.
Yes, but remember, that is why I said at the very beginning, it all depends what our intentions are and what the agenda is all about. You could have put him there asking for the deputy president position, and then you let the vote of no confidence come in. If it's coming from somebody else, how is the DA not going to support it? How is the Freedom Front not going to support. And if they support it, and if they remove President Cyril Ramaphosa, and if John Steenhuisen is the deputy president, he'll be the acting president. As simple as that. There's serious allegations even as far as the deputy president is concerned.
Okay, so these are some of the complications.
These are the risks attached.
These are some of the complications and risks attached to it. Obviously, there's another WhatsApp message coming through. Having said that, I think Brother Imam Sheikh has done a great job so far, both in politics and justice for Palestine. There are comments coming through that there's a great discussion. Jazakallah to the team, including the panelists. The point of departure simply, Imam, is that these are the risks that the ANC take in working with the DA, that if these discussions come up, how would they react? Indications are that they supported Cyril, they have confidence in him. They may not raise it. The opposition parties may raise it, and they may end up getting 30% of support, which will then, the motion will not be carried out. But I want to conclude. We got about 7 minutes left. I want to bring Hassan in. Hassan, if there's a compromise and the GNU continues to work, how much of positive sentiment you foresee in the economic sector?
Sure. I think a couple of areas. First, I'll focus on the hard economy, and then I'll talk on the financial markets per se. On the economy itself, over the last 15 years, we've had a lack of private sector investment in particular, but in many aspects, infrastructure investment as well. We've only seen some slowly uptick taking place in the last 2 years. If there's a GNU that raises confidence within the local investor community and the foreign investor community, there will be a positive impact in terms of infrastructure and the like spending taking place here. Firstly, you're already seeing it in terms of, we talked about the energy sector, but don't underestimate what will happen in terms of secondly around the rail, the roads, and the ports related infrastructure spending. You're already talking about the Philippines appointment company that will be looking to be appointed on the ports. I think there's other areas where there is improvements, and some of the new appointments within Transnet are actually making positive progress. And with the result, I'm optimistic that there will be some improvement in the rail and the ports related logistics and efficiencies over the next 12, 18 months. That will be fantastic, because that means more minerals are being exported, more of our fruit is being exported, more commodity, more other goods are being brought in. So trade and the like will improve in South Africa. That will be good. That creates confidence. Secondly, there will be more money flowing back into the country in terms of, firstly, direct investments, whether that's property or businesses and the like. We're already seeing it. I talked about Amazon. We talked about few other companies that are coming in and spending billions actually to set up their businesses and grow it in this country. But more importantly, you'll see small and medium enterprises spending more in money in terms of expanding their businesses. That don't underestimate the impact in terms of that on employment, because small and medium enterprises create a lot of employment, and that will be a positive impact in terms of economic growth over the next few years. So that's, I think, positive again, where there's stability. Thirdly, financial markets. South Africa has been one of the worst performing stock markets over the last 10 years globally. Relative to the US, Europe, and the like, we've underperformed that's why one of the financial sort of, I won't call him a guru because I disagree with some of his stuff, but nonetheless, one of the financial sort of commentators, and he's well known, Magnus Haystack, I'll mention his name. He's been anti-South Africa for the last 15 years. His recommendations to clients was take all your money out, put all your money offshore, don't have not 1 cent sitting in this country. And he's called it, to some extent, he's called it right over the last 15 years, because the rand has depreciated and US and particularly the US stock market has outperformed by a substantial measure. However, we've seen recently some inflows coming back into the country. South African stock market is cheap by not only global standards, but emerging market standards. So I think there will be a positive inflow in terms of, firstly, our stock markets, but also our bond markets. We've had close to over 100 billion of outflows out of our stock market and our bond markets over the last 3 years. That's a massive amount of money that's left this country. Now, that money tends to be very volatile because it goes in and out fairly quickly in those markets, but that money could come back in. So that means our bond market, the cost of borrowing starts to come down. Currently, our government bond yields like around 11% or so. It could come back to around 10%, 9% as rates come down. And that means then less payment of interest for the government, more money to spend on other important parts of the economy. Secondly, our stock market, if it improves, that means pension funds are all improving. That means Yunus, a lot of the retirees and the like, you're living off your living annuities and your pension funds and the
Your
like.
values will increase and your returns, yes.
Fantastic for you. That means you're getting a better return on your pension. That means more money for you at the end of the day, more money for you to spend on you and your family.
Yes.
That's fantastic. That's the benefit when you'll get more money coming into our stock markets because of the improvement of the economy, improvement of the company's profits and the like. It's a knock-on effect.
And there's basically investor confidence in the country because of the stable government.
Correct. And then the last area is the rand. More money comes in, the rand strengthens. Don't be surprised. I mean, people may say I'm taking a wild, but I think realistically, don't be surprised if things go stable, if you see some stability over the next 12, 18 months in terms of policy, execution, and there's some improvement in terms of the economy and the like. Don't be surprised the rand goes from $18 to $15. That's a positive impact.
In fact, indications or critics are saying, economists are saying, the realistic value of the rand is below 10 rand.
Correct. If we look at, a lot of them use this Big Mac index and the like, but realistically speaking, if you look at our purchasing power parity, what we can still get for our money in terms of buying food and services here relative to what you're buying in other countries, there's still value.
Brother Yunus was saying he's been to about 45 countries and our cost of living is the cheapest.
It is.
And considering what the country can offer and the facilities,
exactly,
it's far better than many other countries.
And this is not only comparing us to...
our agriculture sector is strong, our mining sector is strong.
100%.
And we've got professionals that are par excellence. Our standard of medicine and other things, engineering, etc., is very high.
Exactly. So even if you're comparing us to the not even comparing just to the Western, so not like the US or the UK and the like, but even compared to emerging markets like China, like Brazil, India, the cost of living here is still much better. It is much. And if you have a strengthening of the rand, it creates some improvement for us, because remember, there is still many things that we import into the country. We're trying. One thing which is, and inshallah it must continue for years and decades to come, is that we must continue to be a food producing country. That is one of the most important things that any country must have.
So our farmers must be given incentives to continue.
They must be given it. And this is historically, it's been obviously the Afrikaner and the like that's been the dominant player within the agriculture sector. We must encourage more from our communities and from the non-white, the black community. More and more farmers need to come out of those communities. Farming is a fantastic profession long-term, and it's important for the country long-term. Look at many countries that are importers of food. Look at the Middle Eastern countries. They rely so much on importing their food product. A country that is self-sufficient on food has a large element of independence. Large element. You cannot be bullied in many things. You cannot be bribed or whatever it is.
And all that is a contributing factor is we have a good climate with good rainfall that's facilitating the process of a good agricultural industry. And we're blessed with a lot of mineral resources and 100%. Also academics that are adding value to the country.
Exactly. I mean, we are blessed. You're right. Firstly, from a climate perspective, from a fertile land perspective, and from academically. I mean, the late Mufti Taha Karan, his brother was actually a fantastic academic within the agricultural space.
Correct.
He's also Maroom. But I mean, just give you an idea, it's across the board that we can get academics and
we're a very strong sporting nation, South Africa.
Exactly.
And then the whites are keen to make South Africa work, being the minority. And this is why the DA is saying, let's forget about our differences and sort out the country. Now, I want to bring you in. We're running out of time here, Imam. There are certain areas, and quickly, that needs sharp focus to get South Africa into the right path. I think Hassan spoke about the economic sector and he covered a host of activities. Now, what's worrying a lot of people in South Africa is safety and security and crime, and at the same time, service delivery at local government level. And this is where you come in, because all's not lost. What processes are required to improve those sectors of concern here? In other words, he's responded to the financial sector, creation of employment, etc. But a lot of people are apprehensive of the high element of crime in this country and safety and security, and that's why it's crucial you have a strong Minister of Justice, a strong Minister of Police, and a strong defense force. So do you believe that the current GNU will attend to those areas as a matter of urgency and in all provinces, including nationally, deal with safety and security?
Well, let me start off by saying that, 2 years ago, I've been raising the issue and I've called for the DA and the ANC to put their differences aside and work together in the interest of the country. Until, of course, the 7th of October came and we saw another side of the DA, and that my opinion about them changed. So we must also be mindful that this GNU is going to have an impact on international politics, particularly the country's stand on Palestine, human rights, upholding human rights and matters of then, we have to worry about religious freedom in the country and a whole lot of things. Remember, we find ourselves in a very difficult position, particularly as members of the Ummah. On the one hand, we have, the way of life. We have our Holy Quran. We have the way we should be conducting ourselves. On the other hand, you have a country that's been declining. The state of the economy has been deteriorating. The ANC has been failing. Not only the ANC, but other political parties wherever they've been governing. So we've seen a deterioration in the services in the country and the economy and the lifestyle and living conditions of our people. So we needed a balance. And unfortunately, we find ourselves in the middle of this. And what is going to happen, you can only see in the next year or two, and what the conduct of some of the parties is going to be. But coming back to the issue of the delivery of services and things, and even on the issue of crime, I said this before and I'm saying it again, unless you deal with the socio-economic conditions under which our people live, you can put as many police officers there, another 50,000, 200,000, you won't solve the problem. You need to deal with the high levels of unemployment, the gender-based violence, decent housing. Unemployment rate is so high in the country.
So the causes of this criminal activity has to be dealt with.
You have to get to the root causes of that
side by side with strong policing, etc.
Secondly, and more importantly, is the issue which is the issue of cadre deployment and corruption at starting from local level in all spheres of government, which is
sharp focus have to be on
500 billion rand and estimated. That's what you're losing in this country annually.
So you need to pump back
So if you can deal with that and cadre, I've given a solution as far as that, and that is when I said, and I went on a study tour to Ireland and things, and I raised these questions. An independent body with no interference from politicians and political parties to appoint and employ people who are best suited to do the job. And as far as tenders and procurement, there is processes you can put in. We've given solutions. The question is, do we want those solutions? Now, I'll give you a good example, KZM. If you saw the other day, Zululand District Municipality, 322 million rand written off irregular, fruitless and wasteful expenditure. What position has that mayor now got with the 322 million rand irregular, fruitless expenditure? What did he get? He's now the MEC for Kokta and KZM. So where are you heading to? Where exactly are you heading to? So you can see these are the things we have to worry. You need to deal with corruption. You need to deal with cadre deployment. And I'm finding myself in a very difficult situation because here you've got the corruption in KZN is totally out of control. You've got the ANC there, you've got the IFP's corruption there, you've got the NFP's corruption there, and there you've got the DA that's coming in now to say, we are in bed together, but how are we going to be able to
listen, the two DA MECs have already said they're cutting on costs.
Yeah.
The Minister of Finance has already closed that one office and saving 100 million. So they're starting to make changes. But just I want to wrap up now, Imam. Obviously, all's not lost for you. You came in new. For whatever reason, you lost off. There were certain, consequences of you losing off. And these were comments you mentioned at the start. But you mentioned that this delivery arm is local government. 2026 will be a key year. And obviously, the smaller parties need to mobilize, and the supporters and the civic organizations need to work closely to ensure that the correct ward councillors are appointed so that service delivery can be improved at local government. Perhaps you want to just give me your closing
Yes,
comments.
indeed. We will be, inshallah, contesting the 2026 elections in any event. It's back to the drawing board. We are busy on the ground all over, sorting out memberships and identifying the right kind of candidates to represent us in all the different areas in the country. And you are correct, local government is the heartbeat of the delivery of services, and that's where we need ethical people. We need people that are committed and dedicated. So we are on the ground at the moment addressing that, and we will be, inshallah, participating in the 2026.
Finally, you mentioned, off air that there was concern about the Muslim vote because your research indicated that there were plus minus 800,000 countrywide of Muslim registered voters, of which more or less than 200,000 are accounted for as voting, and the smaller parties altogether had less than 50 or 60,000 of the Muslim vote. Where the rest went to, we don't know. Either they haven't voted or they voted for the other parties.
Oh, I'm not convinced. I think this is just mischief making. I think, like my brother said earlier on, I'm not satisfied that the Muslim voters didn't vote. I think they did. Remember, there was a big push, a very big push from business and certain sectors asking the Muslim population to vote for the ANC. So I think they have come out, they have voted. I estimated the ANC to get about 37%, they got 40%. So I think our people did come out, whether they got the right advice and the right guidance to do what they did, but they did it with good intention. But now, of course, you learn sometimes from your mistakes. I think the Muslim voters, to a very large extent, those that were registered, and I think they were an estimated, they say 800,000 or between 500 and 800,000. They did come out and they have voted for the ANC, a lot of them. Very small percentage for Al Jama, AM4C and Sun Party. But they did come out. So I don't really believe that they have gone in large numbers. There will be a percentage that voted for the DA and others, but not a large percentage. So I'm not going to be swayed by this view that no, the Muslim community deserted the Ummah and went and voted for the DA and thing. I really don't believe that is the case. I think in this particular Al Ansar radio station, there's been calls from people in KZN saying that they voted for us, and things like that. So no, I'm quite convinced that they did come and they took the advice. And of course, the advice may not have necessarily been the right one, but they took the advice and they did what they had to do. My only concern is where to from here, particularly for the Ummah in the country. My very serious concern is for foreign affairs, international politics. What is going to happen when it comes to the issue of Palestine and many others where we've been in the forefront and we've been working together with various political parties. But the struggle goes on. From the AM4C's point of view, we will continue to strive for a free Palestine, of course, and of course to uphold human rights and protect our religious freedom in the country, inshallah.
Shukran, Ahmad, for those closing remarks. I think it is abundantly clear that, people are now focusing on municipal elections. We are making du'as as a ummah that Allah guides the current government of national unity into reaching agreement on the appointment of the cabinet positions on a proportional basis and on merit. And those appointments serve the interest of the country so that both from an economic perspective, political perspective, and religious perspective, there is benefit to the ummah, and that crime and security is dealt with appropriately, and maladministration and corruption is something of the past. As a minority ummah in this country and a large majority in other parts of the world, we have to make du'as that the Muslim ummah is united, and we turn to the creator of all creations, that's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah listens to those that obey his commandments. And one of the commandments is we have to be regular with our salah, which is compulsory, our 5-time salah. And once we do that and we our dealings are just, then the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes, and for the benefit of the ummah. So we got an important role to play as Muslims to make du'as for the politicians so that not only South Africa benefits, but also other parts of the world, including our international relations on Palestine. And as one politician from the African National Congress mentioned, that the issue of Palestine has been redlined, and the GNU is not going to interfere with the government's position on ICJ, etc. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be in control, and we have to make du'as that Allah takes care of our Palestinian brothers and sisters. Those that have been martyred, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them the high stage in Jannat al-Firdaus. We that are still living in the Ummah have to make du'as for not only Muslims in Palestine, plus throughout the world, and also make du'as for peace throughout the world, and that we have a prosperous, a world that benefits the people that live in there, because this is what Sharia is all about, and the Constitution is the Holy Quran for the entire world. And if we and Muslims can inculcate the principles of the Quran and the Sunnah of Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam to the rest of the world, then we will have a successful world going, forward. On that note, that brings us to the end of News in Focus for this evening. We had a lively discussion with Brother Yunus Suleiman. We thank him for joining us. We thank Hassan, as usual, for always being available to give us very important information on the economic sector. We also thank Brother Imam Sheikh. I know that, Imam is a very sporty individual, that he doesn't take the results of the election as something to heart. He always looks at the way forward, and there's brighter prospects for all the smaller parties. And as Muslims, we have to become civic active, join the Ratepayer Association, civic organizations, and hold municipalities to account, because that's where there is a lack of service delivery. And in KZN, in particular, the bigger local authorities like eThekwini, Msunduzi in Pietermaritzburg, Kwadukuza in Stenge, and indeed all the other municipalities where those politicians that are appointed must make sure they improve service delivery. That brings us to the closure of News in Focus. We'll be back next Wednesday, inshallah, with better discussions. Probably the cabinet positions will be announced, and we may see positive sentiment to the markets. We'll have our guests again in the studio next week. Until then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
The Al Ansar Foundation, Dawah, Tarbiyah, and Education, establishing the foundations of Islamic civilization in South Africa.
Get ready for incredible savings at Bawa's Lifestyle Superstore, Pietermaritzburg. Join us for our end-of-range demo clearance sale, where you can enjoy discounts of up to 60% off. It's the perfect time to upgrade your home with amazing deals